Hey YouTube, it's me, the Student Witch. So I'm going to add my 2 cents into the current discussion within the YouTube and internet pagan witchy community about Black Lives Matter and allyship and our role with and within that. So I am a graduate student and I am working on specializing in US Latino and Caribbean diasporic literature and cultural production. So I'm fairly well versed in US Latino literature and academic scholarship, critical race theory, queer theory specifically written by people of color, feminist theory, border studies, all of these wonderful things. So I'm going to today be talking about a book that I read for a performance theory class that I took a year or two ago. And the book's title, you can see right here, is Embodying Black Experience, Stillness, Critical Memory, and the Black Body. It was published in 2010 and it was written by Harvey Young. He's a professor. And this book is an excellent read, and hopefully by doing this review I might spark some interest in the book, and I hope you enjoy this review. So in general, this book, it is a phenomenological study on blackness, the black body, and he has a really interesting spin on this movement and stillness idea. So without further ado, here we go! Harvey Young's Embodying Black Experience, Stillness, Critical Memory, and the Black Body, published by the University of Michigan Press in 2010. In his intriguing and reflective book, Embodying Black Experience, Harvey Young explores the lived experience of blackness in the United States and argues that a phenomenological perspective allows for a better understanding of the idea of the black body and how it has been invoked and contested in the 19th, 20th, and 21st centuries. Heavily inspired by the works of Frantz Fanon, Young is able to establish the idea and experience of the black body as his objects of analysis, and builds upon the theories of such scholars as Paul Gilroy, Kim Butler, and Rebecca Schneider. By keeping phenomenal blackness at the center of his analysis, Young offers refreshing new views on intersectionality and diaspora studies as he investigates the, quote, slippage of abstraction into materiality, end quote, that results from the application of the idea of the black body onto black folk and their experience of the two-ness of black jouissance and pain. The first chapter, The Black Body, serves as the book's introduction, in which Young outlines his methodology and defines his principal concepts of the black body and phenomenal blackness. Within the scope of his analysis, the black body is a, quote, an abstracted and imagined figure that, when mapped across or internalized within black folk, results in phenomenal blackness. By combining performance, phenomenological, and biographical methodologies, Young challenges previous studies centered on blackness and intersectionality, arguing that the black body can serve as a discursive site from which it is possible to see how, quote, an idea of the black body materially affects actual bodies, end quote, regardless of a person's gender, age, sexual preference, social class, and education. With his new focus on the black body, Young organizes his following chapters by genre: photography, sport, especially boxing, theater, and museum display, in order to highlight what his selected case studies have in common: phenomenal blackness and its role in both suppressing black communities and offering the possibility of agency and resistance. In his second chapter, titled Still Standing, Daguerreotypes, Photography and the Black Body, Young studies how photography has been used to both perpetuate stereotypes and challenge them. Specifically, he analyzes representations of the black body in the daguerreotypes of Joseph T. Zealy, the portraits of Black photographer Richard Roberts, and the Depression-era documentary photographs of Walker Evans. In an imaginative break from the current diaspora studies focus on movement, Young emphasizes the use of stillness in presencing the experience of the Middle Passage, allowing for the creation of family histories and genealogies, and in enabling agency and social critique in the wake of abject poverty and racism. Next, in the chapter Between the Ropes, Staging the Black Body in American Boxing, Young traces the history of American boxing and studies how the idea of the black body has been applied to and manipulated by 4 prominent black boxers: Tom Molineaux, Jack Johnson, Joe Louis, and Muhammad Ali. Paying particular attention to Ali's protest of the draft in the Vietnam War and his performance of stillness during the induction ceremony, Young demonstrates how the idea of the black body affected the boxers' careers and personal lives, and, in the case of Ali, provided the opportunity to control representations of his own body and challenge the racist expectations of dominant culture. In his chapter, Touching History, Staging the Black Experience, Young dedicates the entire chapter to analyzing representations of the female black body within the framework of theater. He begins with Susan Laurie Parks's Venus, and through a textual analysis, argues that Parks's portrayal of Saartjie Baartman, or the Hottentot Venus, allows for a reclaiming of the black body that challenges the assumption that, quote, the framing of theater can only repeat what occurs in everyday life, that the body can only be a historical body replayed, end quote. He then continues with Robbie Macaulay's Sally's Rape and Dale Orlander Smith's Yellow Man, maintaining that these playwrights center not the voice, but the body on stage, thus challenging, quote, the muting effect of historical erasure, end quote. In his final chapter, titled Housing the Memory of Racial Violence, The Black Body as Souvenir, Museum, and Living Remain, Young begins with the phenomenon of the lynching keepsake, which transformed the black body into a souvenir, and then moves to an analysis of America's Black Holocaust Museum in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and a critique of performance scholarship that privileges the temporality of live performance, such as that of Peggy Phelan. Young proposes a turn in focus toward the performance remains, and its ability to reactivate the expired performance event, or the lynching event, and remember the body of the victim. By combining phenomenological performance and biographical methodologies, Embodying Black Experience offers new and interesting ways to study representations and experience of the black body in the United States. Despite the book's shortcomings in the 4th chapter, particularly its textual analysis of Parks's Venus that appears disjunctive compared to the phenomenological analysis of the rest of the book, Young's contributions to African diaspora, intersectionality, and performance studies proves to be invaluable for current scholarship and research. Embodying Black Experience is an innovative engagement with such fields and offers new frameworks for better understanding the Black experience. Alright, so that was my review. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It's really interesting how Young pushes against the emphasis of movement that has dominated African diaspora studies since the 80s and the 90s. I'm thinking about Paul Gilroy's The Black Atlantic and this use of the Middle Passage as metaphor for talking about the Black experience and talking about diaspora. And don't get me wrong, the idea of movement is essential, but I really love how Young adds to but simultaneously pushes against movement by looking at stillness. Stillness in photographs, stillness in museums, all sorts of stillness things. And as a way of beginning the book, Young starts with a personal anecdote. He tells a story of how in his university town up in New York, where he teaches as a professor, how he was pulled over one night by the police and he eventually was arrested and charged with resisting arrest simply because he asked the question, why am I being pulled over? Why am I being arrested? Simply for asking that question, he was charged with resisting arrest, which I think in New York is a felony. So he was charged with a felony just for asking, why am I being arrested? And he talks about driving while black and police brutality, and keeping in mind the fact that this book was published in 2010, I believe it precedes the Black Lives Matter movement by a few years. So I do think that this book can add to our understanding, especially for those of us who do not identify as black. It adds to our understanding of blackness, of the black body, and how this black body moves with and within dominant culture and whiteness and white privilege. So I would say it is a very good read. It's a very thorough book. I enjoyed reading it. It was not too heavy in academic jargon, which can be a problem when it comes to access and being open to a more general audience. So I would highly recommend this book if you can get your hands on a copy of it. If you want a more academic but not too heavily academic read about blackness, if you are interested in the Black Lives Matter movement, I highly, highly recommend this book. So I will follow this video up with further videos talking about terminology and whiteness and privilege, and I'll end with a discussion of nation states. So see you later. Bye.